has a neighbourhood-first policy towards nations in South Asia, a policy that pushes for economic and cultural ties, one that is more often than not under attack by China's string of pearls policy of encirclement, evident by the protests for and against India among political parties, governments and opposition leaders in India's neighbourhood. The latest comes from Bangladesh, where the opposition BNP is asking for an India Out campaign. Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina issued a scathing rebuttal to the opposition's call to boycott India. Referring to the deep trade ties with India, Hasina asked the BNP leaders to burn their wives' sarees before asking the country to sever ties with India.
I have a question for those leaders talking about boycotting Indian products. Their wives have some beautiful Indian sarees, then why don't you get those sarees and burn them?
Hasina recently won her fourth consecutive term in office in Bangladesh. Her critics and the opposition have called the elections rigged and influenced by India's strong support for Hasina. But this is a charge not restricted to neighbour Bangladesh. Every country in South Asia is being wooed by India and China, and for many it's a delicate balancing act. India has for decades maintained a neighbourhood-first policy, but China's aggressive debt diplomacy has forced countries to choose sides. China is a hefty global player who has more often than not made inroads in India's exclusive spheres of influence. Take, for example, Sri Lanka, where a project was transferred from China to India to build power generation facilities in the island nation. In March, Lanka confirmed that the project would be funded by an 11 million Indian government grant. India also scored a win over China in January when the island nation said it would not allow Chinese research vessels to dock at its ports or operate within its exclusive economic zones. However, in April, Lanka announced that both its strategic Hambantota port and the Colombo airport will be developed by China. This after the recent visit of the Lankan Prime Minister Gunawardene to China. China accounts for 10% of Lanka's foreign debt and was leased the Hambantota port after the South Asian nation was not able to repay its loan. The change of guard in the Maldives has meant that the Moisu government is increasingly leaning on China. It has also signed a defence pact with China while asking all Indian troops to leave the island nation. But India accounts for the largest number of tourists to the island nation, and amid the backlash from the opposition, Malé has toned down the rhetoric. And despite Mohammad Moisu's recent actions, India has increased its development aid to Maldives at 771 crore rupees. One of it is a 500 million assistance aimed at improving roads and highways in the country. On to another of India's neighbours, Nepal. The Himalayan state has been India's closest friend in the region for decades, sharing cultural and economic ties. But the recent move by Pushpa Kamal Dahal that dumped a Delhi-leaning coalition partner for KP Oli, known to be a staunch China ally, has many worried. India is aware of China's policy of encirclement and has adapted to it. The Indian Prime Minister was also in Bhutan last week in a bid to strengthen age-old ties amid concerns of Chinese encroachments and the possible Sino-Bhutanese territorial agreement. India has so far offered 308 lines of credit worth over $32 billion to various partners in Asia and Africa, and over 600 development projects in Asia. As the saying goes, you can't change your neighbours. And India's neighbours must be wary of China's string of pearls strategy as they aim to balance their relationship between two global giants. For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.